Let's talk about what you found out at the World Cup. Now, 3D has been associated with a whole variety of things, like all things new and like all things to do with new technology. There are concerns, there's excitement, but you had an opportunity during the Soccer World Cup to test some of these things and thinkings. What did you find?
Well, ESPN in the United States, of course, went with the 3D version of the World Cup on one of its channels. And during the course of the World Cup, we did 2,700 hours of testing on how the audiences responded to that. That's the largest 3D study ever to look at the effects. And we looked at what the effects were in terms of the program. Was the program better? Did audiences enjoy it more, etc.? We looked at the effects on the ads that appeared in 3D. We looked at health effects. I mean, it was very extensive. So we covered a lot of different questions. We studied the effects with some people who came and watched every day for 5 days.
Right.
They watched a game. We studied it where they would watch 3 games in a row. So we studied the problem from many different perspectives. One of the things that's also unique about our style of research is we don't just rely on what people say.
Yeah.
We also attach wires to people, and we study how the body reacts to the content.
Right.
So we studied, for example, their electrodermal activity, which tells us about how much they were really aroused by what they were saying. We gave eye exams before and after so that we could see if their stereopsis or their depth perception was affected. Okay. Very, very, very extensive study.
Okay, and what did you find?
Well, for the program, so in terms of enjoying watching the soccer...
Viewing experience, I think, which is what it is all about.
The viewing experience, we found that the 3D experience was superior. Audiences enjoyed the experience more. They were much more involved in the game, and the most dramatic difference was the sense of being there. 3D, of course, created a sense of presence. The feed that you watched very much felt like you had a box office seat and you were watching the game through the window of your box office. And I think that sense of presence was very strong. On the ads, we found that advertising in 3D was more effective. We found that it significantly improved people's memory of ads. We found that the likability of ads went up, so people liked the ads more.
Why was that?
Well, I think that normally with television advertising, it's, you know, the advertiser has a challenge, and the challenge is really to get you to be interested in their product, interested in their message. 3D creates, I think, a much more realistic, you know, sense of realism.
Yeah.
And so you have much more sense of being there, seeing it, seeing the product in use, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
And even purchase intent went up. So it was very dramatic results in terms of the advertising impact.
Yeah. Now, as I said at the beginning, with new technology comes concerns around health, and of course health is one of the bigger issues that's confronting 3D. In terms of that, what did you find from your tests?
Well, we were very concerned about health as well. As you say, there's a lot of unknowns. It was very important for ESPN before they engaged in, you know, further deployment to really understand what the potential health effects were. Yeah. Part of the problem that we have with the health effects is people's frame of reference is a little bit mistaken. So normally when you say 3D TV, people immediately think 3D movies.
Right.
And 3D television is very different from 3D movies. When you're in a movie theater, your whole field of vision is taken up with the movie. The theater is dark, you don't see anything else. This means that what your eyes see and what your body is telling you are a little bit in conflict. But of course with television, it's very different because you have frames of reference. It's like you're looking through a window. You see objects in the room, etc. You know that the world's not spinning. So for example, nausea, which people commonly attribute to the experience in cinemas, we found no evidence that nausea was occurring any more in 3D than it was in 2D. Stereopsis was another concern, which is depth perception. Okay. We're very worried that maybe...
Just explain that. When you say depth perception, what do you mean?
So in the real world, there's 2 ways largely that we perceive depth.
Right.
One is
This is me looking at you.
Yes, you're trying to see whether I'm close or far from you.
Right.
You use 2 things. One, you use convergence and divergence of your eyes.
Okay.
So based on whether your eyes are converging or diverging, you're getting a sense of how far away or how close objects are. But you're also using visual cues. If my head is a little bit bigger, if it's a little bit smaller, that's giving you some points of reference.
Right.
Now, 3D television, of course, has a little bit of a problem. Your eyes have to fixate on the screen, and the screen doesn't come closer and go farther. So the way that normally you perceive depth by converging and diverging your eyes doesn't work. So this is the conflict that's created.
Okay.
So that's the reason why there was a concern. However, what we discovered is that among adults, we only tested with adults, that amongst adults there was no issue. There were no there was no variation, no variability in people's real-world depth perception, even if they had 8 hours of exposure, or even if they watched 3D every day for 5 days.
Yeah.
Still, we found no evidence that there was any adverse effect in terms of depth perception.
Okay, so the test proved that 3D does enhance that viewing experience. So let's talk about where we are in the world in relation to 3D. Who is watching the world in 3D now?
Well, the most advanced market is probably the United States. I say that because there is a network, ESPN, which is 24/7 in that market. So the availability of content, I think, is one of the biggest barriers that we see.
Yeah.
And there are a number of Asian markets, of course, that have embraced 3D. But I think that the pace of rollout is variable around the world. We'll see different markets will, largely dependent, I think, on how fast content rolls out.
Is there a point in time where we will see 3D taking over the world? Becoming the norm, the standard?
Well, I think it will be a norm. I don't think it will be the norm.
Right.
I don't think that 3D television is something you'll do all the time. I don't think you'll turn on the television and watch all your shows in 3D. I think it will still largely be something that's a special viewing experience.
Right.
So you'll want to watch a movie, maybe tonight's movie on air, you may want to watch that in 3D. Maybe you want to watch the sports in 3D. There will be those special occasions. Whether your viewers in the future will be watching CNBC in 3D, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how much that experience needs to be in 3D to have the full experience, if you will.
And where in Africa do you see us being able to catch up with the rest of the world in relation to TV? Will there be ever a time when 3D will become, you know, part of our normal view experience?
I don't want to say ever, but if we look at the short term, I think there are a lot of barriers in Africa. The key problem, I think, is not the TV set. I think in relative terms, the cost of a TV set, 2D to 3D, is very small now. So it's not so much a question of the display being in the home. Now the question is content.
Right.
And in Africa, I think in South Africa and Africa in general, we face a number of barriers. You know, we don't have even high def widely deployed. So, you know, trying to make the bandwidth available for 3D, I think, is a challenge.
Now, before I go now, we're running out of time now. You do a lot of work around the TV world.
Yes.
The future of TV, as you see it in your eyes, will there be change as we know TV today?
Well, there already are changes. People are experiencing television on their mobile phones. They're experiencing television online. Now we have connected TVs which are pulling content online and putting them on TVs. And for viewers, they don't care whether the signal is delivered by satellite, whether it's delivered by over the air, or whether it's delivered by the internet. If they can watch good shows on television, that's all they care about. So I do think that we will see more rapid growth of online delivered television and of mobile delivered television as we move into
Does that spell trouble for the employer? Because if that TV is going to be delivered online, that means, you know, people at work, instead of doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, will be busy watching movies and football and all those
maybe
kind of
they're
things.
busy now watching Facebook. And I mean, yes, I think there's always going to be that challenge. I think you know, we live in a world where increasingly all media are available to us all the time, everywhere we go, and that's one of the changes that we're seeing is we're moving away from scheduled TV to TV that's with us everywhere we are, and in the ways that we want to use them.
And a world without TV ads, because we're skipping them, you know, through PVR or DVR, we skip all over them.
Well, I don't think we'll see a world without TV ads. We need business models to make television work. Those models will adapt. Those models will change. I don't think you're going to see the end of TV advertising.
One of the startling things you said when I was speaking to you earlier was that the fact that even when people skip ads, they actually, in terms of the ad impact, you're losing nothing. How is that?
Well, that's not our research. Our research actually says that when you fast forward through ads, the ad impact is devastating. But there are people who are publishing studies which say that the ad impact doesn't suffer. We don't agree with that research. Our research kind of shows otherwise. But I think advertisers are right to be concerned, but also there are many new opportunities, and I think advertisers really have to explore and understand a lot of the new opportunities that are on the horizon as well.